The air in the single room in Ajagunle was thick with two things: the humid Lagos heat and the impossible dreams of Stanley and Juliana. Their love was a fierce, bright flame in the dark expanse of their poverty. Stanley, with hands calloused from hauling cement bags at a construction site, would trace the map of their future on Juliana's palm. One day, he'd whisper, his voice raspy with dust and exhaustion, "I will build you a house so big, you will need a map to find the kitchen. Our children will go to the best schools. I promise you, my love." Juliana would smile, a beautiful, heart-wrenching smile that held both faith and fear. She loved Stanley with every fiber of her being, but love, she was beginning to realize, could not fill an empty stomach or mend a leaking roof. The constant pressure from her parents, who saw her beauty as a ticket out of the ghetto, was a relentless drumbeat in her ears. The drumbeat became a symphony the day Chief Okoro's gleaming black Mercedes-Benz glided to a stop in their muddy street. Chief was a man built of excess, a large belly that spoke of endless feasts, diamond rings that glittered menacingly, and a voice that dripped with the arrogance of new money. He had seen Juliana at the market and had become instantly obsessed. He offered her a world Stanley could only whisper about in the dark. The breakup was a quiet, brutal storm. "Stanley, I cannot do this anymore," Juliana said one evening, avoiding his gaze. "I am tired of promising my stomach that food is coming. I am tired of dreaming." "Juliana, what are you saying?" Stanley's heart hammered against his ribs. "We have each other. We have love." She finally looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Love cannot cook soup, Stanley. Love cannot pay for my mother's medicine. Chief Okoro can. He wants to marry me." The words struck Stanley with the force of a physical blow. He felt the air leave his lungs. He begged, he pleaded, he reminded her of their promises, of the future he was breaking his back to build for them. But her mind was made up. A week later, he watched from a painful distance as she, adorned in expensive lace, became the fourth wife of Chief Okoro. The sight shattered him into a million pieces. Juliana's new life was a gilded cage. The mansion in Ikoyi was breathtaking, with marble floors so polished she could see her sad reflection in them. But the beauty was a facade. Chief Okoro was a tyrant. His words were whips, his temper a raging fire. He belittled her village upbringing, mocked her family, and paraded his mistresses in front of her. Her life was a lonely cycle of lavish parties where she was little more than a beautiful ornament, and silent nights where she cried into silk pillows. The birth of her son, Kelechi, was her only solace, a tiny anchor in a turbulent sea. But even he could not protect her. After 5 years, when the chief found a younger, more exciting woman, he cast Juliana aside as easily as he would an old suit. The gateman, who once bowed to her, threw her bags onto the street. With a bewildered Kelechi clutching her hand, she was ejected from the mansion, penniless and disgraced. On the other side of Lagos, Stanley's heartbreak had crystallized into a ferocious determination. His mother, Mama Stanley, a pillar of unshakable faith, had moved in with him. "My son," she would say, rubbing his aching back with hot water and herbs, "the stone the builders rejected will become the cornerstone. Cry your tears, but let them water the seeds of your future." He took her words to heart. The pain of Juliana's betrayal became the fuel that powered him. He worked with the fury of a man possessed. He pushed wheelbarrows under the scorching sun, his skin darkening to the color of rich earth. He hauled carts loaded with goods in the chaotic Mushan market, his muscles screaming in protest. He saved every single naira, living on gari and groundnuts. He started a small sand and gravel supply business with his meager savings. His reputation for honesty and hard work spread. Small contracts led to bigger ones. He poured every waking hour into his work, his mother's prayers his constant shield. Within 10 years, the man who once lived in a single room in Ajagunle was Stanley, Stan, Okonjo, the CEO of Stan Construct Global, a real estate and construction empire with tentacles spreading across West Africa. He moved his mother into a sprawling mansion in Lekki Phase 1, the kind of house he had once promised Juliana. He bought her cars, draped her in jewels, and gave her the life of a queen. Mama Stanley's joy was his greatest reward. His life was full. He was respected, wealthy, and had found love again. His fiancée, Zainab, was the elegant and intelligent daughter of Senator Balogun. She loved him not for his wealth, but for the story of grit and resilience etched into his very soul. Their engagement was the talk of the town, a merger of new money and old political power. One sweltering Tuesday afternoon, Stanley was driving his custom brown Range Rover Vogue through the bustling streets of Oberlende. He was on his way to a site meeting, but the traffic was at a standstill. Feeling a pang of thirst, he spotted a row of shops by the market. He wound down his tinted window, the cool, air-conditioned air of his car clashing with the hot, fish-scented air outside. "Excuse me," he called out to a boy. "Please get me a bottle of cold water." As he waited, his eyes idly scanned the market scene, the vibrant chaos of sellers hawking their wares, the cacophony of voices, the rainbow of colors. And then, he saw her. She was sitting on a low wooden stool, shaded by a large, tattered umbrella. Her face was gaunt, the once bright light in her eyes dimmed to a weary ember. Her wrapper was faded, and her hands, the same hands he had once promised to adorn with gold, were rough and chapped from scaling fish. A small, barefoot boy with large, soulful eyes sat beside her, listlessly fanning away flies from a tray of tilapia and catfish. The world seemed to slow down. The horns, the shouting, the entire symphony of the market faded into a dull hum. It was Juliana, the woman who had been his sun, his moon, his entire universe. The woman who had shattered his heart and, in doing so, inadvertently forged the man he had become. He felt a complex cocktail of emotions swirl within him, a ghost of the old pain, a surge of pity, but surprisingly, no anger. The anger had burned out long ago, leaving behind only the cold ashes of memory. He got out of the car, his expensive Italian shoes stepping onto the dusty ground. He walked towards her, a titan of industry approaching a ghost from his past. Her head was down, focused on her work. "Juliana," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. She froze. The knife in her hand stilled. Slowly, as if in a dream, she lifted her head. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then filled with a tidal wave of shame. She looked at him, at his crisp white shirt, the Patek Philippe watch on his wrist, the aura of power and success that radiated from him like heat. Then she looked at her own soiled hands, the flies buzzing around her fish, and the crushing weight of her choices came crashing down on her. "Stanley," she whispered, her voice a fragile, broken thing. The little boy, Kelechi, looked up at the tall, imposing man, then at his mother's face, confused by the sudden tension. "What happened?" Stanley asked, his gaze soft, taking in her worn-out appearance and the hardship carved into her features. Tears welled up in Juliana's eyes and began to stream down her cheeks, tracing clean paths through the grime on her face. He threw me out," she stammered, unable to elaborate on the years of misery. "Life has been hard." Stanley's eyes fell on the little boy, who looked so much like her. He felt a pang in his chest, not of love, but of profound sorrow for the life this innocent child had been born into. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a thick wad of naira notes, more money than Juliana had seen in years, and pressed it into her fishy hand. "Take this," he said. "For you and the boy. Get something to eat. Find a better place to stay." She stared at the money, then at him, speechless. I can't," she choked out. "Take it, Juliana. Consider it a debt paid for a lesson I needed to learn." He then pulled out his business card. "My foundation helps women like you start small businesses. Proper ones. If you are serious about changing your life, call this number. Ask for the director. Tell them I sent you." He turned to leave, his heart heavy but at peace. "Stanley, wait," she called out, her voice desperate. I am so sorry. I was foolish. I made a terrible mistake." He paused but did not turn back. "We all make choices, Juliana," he said, his voice carrying over his shoulder. "The difference is the price we pay for them. Goodbye." He got back into his Range Rover, the smell of expensive leather a stark contrast to the smell of the market. As his driver navigated back into the flow of traffic, he glanced at the picture of Zainab on his phone screen, her bright, smiling face a beacon of his present and his future. He was driving towards a life of happiness and fulfillment, a life he had built from rubble and ashes. Behind him, in the noise and heat of the market, Juliana stood clutching the money and the card, her son looking up at her with questioning eyes. The tears continued to fall, no longer just for her suffering, but for the great, beautiful love she had thrown away for a promise of gold that turned out to be nothing but dust.